faith. The hope that one's truth will support their worldview, despite any evidence to the contrary. So we have faith when the hopes that we have, no matter how utterly disproven they are, fit what we already know. We just hope that it's accurate, the idea in our head. Now, there's a big difference between faith and religion. I'm not a fan of faith, but I don't really know whether it's always a bad thing. I know it's usually a bad thing, particularly when religion tells us that we need to use it. I'll give you an example of faith that doesn't have anything to do with religion. So I remember being in my math and science academy as a little kid, and in most of the classrooms there was a ratio of about 15 to 20 girls for every 10 boys. It was almost always at least a half and half situation, and there was never more boys than girls. So at one point, some teacher's aide comes in and tells us that there was this rumor going around that girls don't learn math and science as well after they hit adolescence. And the girls were just livid, of course, as you would expect. I was just sitting there giggling. Not at the girls, of course, but I was giggling because that just made no sense. I mean, I spent years watching these girls just kicking butt all day, every day. And then all of a sudden, they're supposed to be underrepresented when they're just a tiny bit older. Like, it's not as though all the smart girls in town were at my school. I mean, the place was overwhelmingly female, and they were doing awesome. And I would hear stuff like, oh, you know, the boys like to run the classroom. I was like, when? Where was this? I don't remember that. I don't remember boys running around trying to stop the girls from enjoying math. I mean, if the boys were acting dumb in the classroom, there were just as many girls doing the same thing. You're hearing nowadays that there's this separation that needs to happen. We need to have this STEM environment for just girls so that they can feel appreciated. I'm thinking, who are these boys? That doesn't say a whole lot about the girls. So how does that apply to faith? Well, essentially, what these people are trying to say is that they believe, they have this idea in their head that they hope is true because it fits what they know, it fits what they've seen at least, that the girls will simply cower in the face of smart boys and simply won't feel that it's a girl thing to enjoy math. Now, listen, maybe the STEM environment in decades past were boys' clubs. There were certainly boys' clubs back in the 60s, absolutely. I mean, a lot of women didn't grow up being scientists back then, so maybe there weren't a lot of girls in the 90s who could emulate a strong female role model scientist figure, because there just weren't that many in the family, so maybe that's the case. But after that, I'm sorry, like, how is it hard for girls to enjoy something simply because there's a group that says it's not normal? Why would the teacher listen to that? Why would the teacher allow that? If anything, you should be blaming the teacher. The teacher's the one who's allowing the boys to make it look like it's not a good thing for the girls to be there. I just don't understand. Now, here's what's different. As soon as you hit adolescence, what happens? Well, you get into middle school. You end up often having to pick your classes. And when you're not having your classes told to you, where you are going to learn math, you are going to learn science, you are going to learn history, all of a sudden you get to choose. And what are you going to choose? Well, you're going to go where your friends are. Are your friends going to run away from the girls or the boys? And why? Is it society that tells them that? Maybe there should be a home ec class for nothing but boys, or something similar. But you never see that. So apparently, what we've got is a bunch of boys who are being told that it's okay for society to make them feel that they should be in these STEM fields. And it's okay for them to be discouraged away from art or design, making clothing. But it's okay to stereotype the boys, but the girls, we need to open up the fields to make sure that they can thrive. Well, I mean, that's good. It's totally fine if you want to have that option. What if the girls don't want to be in an all-girls classroom? What if they would like to be treated just like everybody else and join the class with a bunch of boys in it? Or maybe the girls just want to hang out with that cute guy over in the corner. Well, that doesn't mean they don't like science. So why do we have this weird faith-based claim that some stereotyping is okay, but with a different group, you should almost make people feel bad about the idea of mixing groups together? I'm seeing more and more of this in higher education. You've seen this with African American and white students in America. You've seen this on the news. Well, wait a minute. It's not good to have separate classrooms for white students and black students, but then you're going to say in college, hey, we need to have these specific stations, these spaces in which you're not going to allow any white people? Just because of their skin color, that means they automatically can't understand something that some African American is going to say in class? I doubt that, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm not saying I know the answers. I'm saying, why are we so dogmatic in our ideas when somebody says, hey, listen, you need to believe this, because if you don't, ooh, I tell you, you're going to be looking bad. Someone is going to make you feel really, really guilty about the thing that you think, or the stuff that you say, or the places that you go, or whatever. I don't recall that. I remember just being in my little math and science academy with a bunch of girls in it, and that didn't stop me from liking things that were not necessarily masculine, based on what society says is masculine. I like playing with trucks and cars and stuff, but I also liked the idea of doing make-believe games like the girls were doing, or playing some hopscotch instead of the touch football on the other side of the playground, or playing with crayons or something. I wasn't a tremendously athletic kid, but was that because I had a lot of girls around? Or maybe it was because that was how I did things. Maybe I was capable of playing with the boy students and the girl students. Maybe that was a way for me to learn how to deal with society in a very diverse manner. Like, I don't know, the real world. You're not going to spend your whole life being surrounded by people just like you whenever something difficult happens. I'm sorry, when you're learning some brand new thing, you're going to have different people around you. You just are. And this expectation that you need to be with people like you in order to learn something, that's an old world concept. That's not how America is. So why are we teaching girls that they're supposed to be a certain way or hang with a certain group? And I see the same thing happening with African Americans. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. I was surrounded by Chinese kids and Mexican kids and Irish kids and Italian kids and an Indian kid. There were all kinds of kids in my classroom. All the time. There was just a different scenario when you just walked to another part of the room. And that was okay. I don't understand why we have to regress just because we're used to a certain thing. Learning is about breaking a little bit apart from what you are comfortable doing. The place where you're comfortable learning. And stretching just far enough to see how you can go. And then later on, it's like a muscle that you flex. You go just far enough and see how far you can go. And the next time, just far enough. And who knows, there's a limit. Everybody's got a limit to what they can handle. Everybody's got biases. Everybody's got issues. They've got personal things that stop them from enjoying the company of certain people. Certain awful things might have happened in the past. There are people who definitely would benefit from hanging around folks that don't trigger a lot of ugly post-traumatic stress. What if there were lots of very terrible people of the opposite gender, whether male or female, in that student's life? Well, sure, I can understand that, but you can't let that be the treatment. That's just the environment. You then need to get a little bit of outside assistance, some extracurricular help in the form of some therapy or something. But you don't just stop with the segregation. That's not a solution. That's a band-aid.